All right, gentlemen, Badass Podcast. Thanks for tuning in. My name is Josh Kidney. With me, as always, McDoyle.
Hello, hello.
All right, and if you were listening to that intro song and wondering to yourself, who the heck is that singer? Well, that singer is our guest today, and his name is Evan Bartels. Evan, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you guys for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, so, I've been making music for a long time, and there's a lot of musicians and songwriters that I appreciate. But when it comes to the songwriters that, give me goosebumps, that, make me do a double take and think, holy crap, who is that? I need to hear some more of them. Evan is on that short list of songwriters for me. And actually, I'm not the only one. A couple months ago, Evan was featured on Theo Von's podcast. Now, for those who don't know, Theo Von is a comedian. He's got a couple specials on Netflix. He's got his own podcast. It's called This Past Weekend. And he also hangs out with people I consider my personal heroes, kind of like Jocko Willink and other folks like that. So he played one of Evan's songs to start his podcast, and then this is what Theo Von had to say afterwards. He said, "There's a lot of beautiful music out there, but that boy's got something in him. In that boy's voice, you can hear it all. I could hear a wagon coming across the prairie. I could hear a fire going. I could see Adam and Eve looking up in the sky and witnessing the Big Bang. I could see it all. I could see a shooting star. I could see a mountain road. I could see an ocean just tackle a fucking universe." That boy did it. He did it right there. So pretty high praise coming from some high places. How did that feel, hearing your song on that podcast and then also hearing what he had to say about it?
Man, it was weird. It was really weird, because I feel, and you'll probably be familiar with this too, both of you guys, since you play music, you always have, after a show, guys come up and they say, "Hey, good gig, man," or, something similar to just really vague. I like this. And so to hear somebody go into, that extravagant of a detail of them being moved by it, especially when it's somebody like Theo Von, because he's an artist, a comedian that I really respect the stuff that he makes. And so, I don't know, hearing somebody like that say how much it moved them, and then what that led to with other people reaching out and saying like, well, this affected me in this way and this way. It was surreal, to say the least.
That's cool. How did that end up happening? How did that come about?
Well, it almost didn't, funnily enough. I woke up one morning and I was just checking my email, and I was just scanning through, and I always, just swipe them away if it looks like it's just, a spam email or whatever have you. And I saw this one that said like form subscription, Evan Bartels, and I didn't realize what it was. And so I started swiping it, and then I saw Theo Von in the message, and I was like, what is this for? And then I realized when I clicked on the website, or when I clicked on the email, that the form submission just means that somebody had emailed me through my website.
Okay.
And so I checked it out, and I had just happened to see Theo Von somewhere in there. And it was actually Theo emailing me saying like, "Hey, I've found you through whoever." One of his friends had said, "You need to listen to this guy." I don't even know. I don't remember what that guy's name was. I could probably look back and see it, but it was somebody I had never heard of, which was, super happenstance as it was. But I just read it, and he was like, "I want to play one of your songs on the podcast." And so I hit him back, and I was like, "Absolutely, that's cool." And he's like, "No, I know it's cool. I just need you to I need you to whitelist it on YouTube so it doesn't get taken down because of copyright and stuff."
Yeah.
And so that's why he had reached out. And so me and Logan went through and we made sure that all that was cool. And then he played it, and we got that Theo Von bump for the first time. And I think he's played it 2 other times since that. And every time he does, dude, daily, like still people hit me up and they on Instagram almost every day and say, "Dude, I heard this song on Theo Von's podcast, and that's why I started following you." And dude, I'm telling you, man, it's amazing. Like,
that's awesome.
The outreach that podcasts have.
So for your social media stuff, when somebody like that says, "Check this guy out," what does that do, like numbers wise, likes, friends?
Numbers wise, Instagram
like
shot up pretty good. It wasn't an avalanche, but it was noticeable. Like Instagram, I know went up just based on how many people would comment on my stuff and be like, "Hey, Theo Von sent me here," and same on YouTube. YouTube was probably the biggest thing besides Spotify that went up for me, because like I'm really bad at making video content, or I'm just bad about doing it, you know. and YouTube's not been something I used a whole hell of a lot in the past. But that went from like 6 subscribers to I think we're almost at 1,000.
Wow.
Which is a pretty big deal
Yeah,
for
it's a
a
big
guy that
bump,
has
yeah.
like 3 videos. But we got more on the way for
Yeah.
YouTube. And then Spotify, I think at the height was something like 20,000 monthly listeners.
Wow.
And then even now it's still at like 10. And we just, on The Devil God in Me, we just broke 100,000 streams on
Yeah.
that.
I was just going to say, I saw that on Instagram, the last couple days?
Yeah,
Broke 100,000.
which
That's
is
amazing.
I know, that's totally crazy. You know, it's just, I feel like it's one of those things that you always hope is going to happen when you're, especially a singer songwriter, but any musician. And then when it actually does, you're like, oh shit, it's weird in a way.
Shit got
It's-
real.
Yeah. And I don't know, man. It's just, I owe a lot to Theo, I feel.
Didn't you get to meet him here a couple weeks ago?
Yeah, he came and he did 2 nights at the Funny Bone here in Omaha, and he had a couple really good comics with him too. But I went out, me and my wife went out, and then my brother Logan and his wife, we all made a date night out of it. Got to meet him and hang out with him, and it was really cool to, like, you know, we just bought those VIP packages with the meet and greet. And so afterwards, when we met him, you know, I went up to like take a picture with him. We did all that, and then right before I left, I was like, oh, hey, I wanted to say thank you for playing my stuff on your podcast. And then like it clicked because I had texted him, you know, 2 months ago when I bought the tickets and said, hey, we're coming out to this show. And so he goes, oh shit, you're the guy, you're Evan Bartels, you're the guy. And I was like, yeah, man. And he was like, holy shit, dude. So it was just really cool to kind of come full circle. And I don't know, he had said then he did a podcast the next day where he played it, and he was like, maybe in April, I think he's going to be in Kansas City. He talked about, I might go down there and see him there or play a few songs or something for an after party.
That'd be awesome.
That would be very awesome. So hopefully it works out with both of our schedules.
Yeah.
Cross my fingers on that one.
Yeah. Crazy. So let's take a little bit of a step back from there, and let's just kind of get to know you as a person, kind of your background, what you were like as a kid, where you grew up, and then maybe transitioned into how you got into music and songwriting to begin with.
Yeah, I grew up here in Nebraska, where we're recording this podcast. But I grew up in a super small town called Tobias, which some people probably have heard of, maybe. Most people probably haven't, because there's only about 100 people there.
Yep.
But
Yeah.
it's I believe what's referred to as a hamlet, even smaller than a village. But yeah, growing up there is just super rural, which was, in my opinion, one of the better ways to grow up, just because it's very free in what you can do. You know, like we did a ton of running around and making things, and that's all it was, man. There's the rules that are set by whoever's raising you and not much else. You know what I mean? So you develop a strong moral compass with a lot of independence, I feel.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I grew up in a town of 350 people, and I mean, our pastime was wandering around town with BB guns.
Oh, yeah.
Imagine trying to do that in Omaha. Like,
Dude,
that
it's
would
the same. We would go around town and we would go rabbit hunting and squirrel hunting with BB guns and pellet guns all the time.
Yeah.
Man. We would even go out to the old railroad tracks, you know, because Tobias is just an old train town, you know, and it was just another stop on the line. And so there's all these kind of decrepit old train tracks that go through, and all the tracks are ripped out, and we would build forts down there, and I mean like serious forts where we would tear down sheds and steal tin and boards, and we would make these forts, and we would put a bunch of candles in there, and it was probably really dangerous in fact, but that's what we did, man. We just built shit, and we would build go-karts out of lawnmowers, and you know, everything that we could do, we did. Build our own bows and just hunt and fish and trap and shoot and all that stuff.
I can't relate. I grew up in a small town of 1.5 million people in Europe's first experiment with project living. And so my childhood was mostly dodging heroin needles that were laying out at the bottom of our flats. But yeah,
Potentially
similar.
mail bombs too.
Bombs, yeah, a little different.
Yeah.
It's a little different,
Yeah.
but that's probably a little bit more interesting.
And yours
way to
is
grow
probably
up.
way more inspiring to write very cool music than mine.
I don't think it is, man. I think it's just different. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know. It leads to I will say this: growing up in either a really, really small rural place like that, or on the other hand, growing up in like a really big, 1.5 million people, those are such kind of uncommon things. I feel that they've really they can lend a unique perspective on the way you view yourself and others and just the world in general. And so I don't know. It's it's a really unique way to grow up, I would say.
I agree. I'm at the time, I didn't know if I would like it because I went from Omaha to the small town. But looking back, man, I'm so glad that's the way I grew up, and just having that freedom, and that's really the small town, and being bored is the only reason I started playing guitar.
Yeah.
So I don't know if this was the same for you. When did you end up starting music, like playing instruments? What was your first instrument, and where did it go from there?
Well, my mother wanted us all to play piano, and I wanted to too. So we started, I think my sister and I have 2 older brothers and a younger sister, and me and her, we took piano lessons for, probably early childhood up until freshman year of high school. I think I took piano. And so I was pretty good for a while. I'm not as good now because I quit practicing. But piano's what started it. And then just wanting a guitar really bad because my dad had one,
Okay.
And so wanting to jam with him. And I had this like little 4-string like plywood ukulele. And I would always break it out and say like, Dad, let's jam. And do you guys remember that it's like the Disney Davy Crockett movie from the 50s, I think
So, yeah. It
Yeah.
rings
Do you
a
know what
bell.
I'm talking about? Well, there's a scene in that where Davy's at the Alamo, and it's like the night before shit goes down, right? And all these guys, they're sitting up on the ramparts and they're watching out, and a guitar comes out from somewhere. I don't know where it came from, but Davy Crockett gets this guitar, and he just sits there and he just does this slow strumming and sings like this such a lonesome song. And I remember watching that one night and going and grabbing my dad's guitar and like being barely big enough to hold it and having no idea, let alone how to tune a guitar, but play chords or anything, and just holding it and strumming and like singing the words to
Being
that
that guy in
song.
the movie.
Yeah, man. And so it was like just I think that's what really attracted me to the guitar, is like feeling an emotion from somebody playing it, like a really intense emotion, and being like, I want to be able to do that, I'm sure that's not how I would have articulated it at the time.
Yeah.
But looking back, I think that's what really spoke to me, is like how I felt hearing that and wanting to be able to create that.
What did your parents do in a small town like that?
Well, my mother stayed home with us for most of our like early childhood, and then she ran a daycare out at the church school that we went to, because we went to parochial school. And so super small out in the country, it was me and 3 other guys in my class. And so she ran a daycare out there, and then she started working at the high school as a para teacher's aide. And my dad he worked out at a hog processing plant called Farmland or Smithfield in Crete, and he's like a diesel mechanic by trade, and he's on the maintenance team out there.
Okay.
Helps fix all that stuff. That's actually one of my, right after high school, I worked there for a summer, and that's intense environment to work in.
No, I can imagine, yeah.
And the shit that they make you do as like as the
newbie?
the noob out there. Oh my God, you guys don't even want to know, man. It's
Pranking you
gnarly.
pretty bad?
No, it's just like, it's not the pranks so much as it is the workload. Like, for example, I worked out there the summer after I graduated high school for, at the time, it was pretty good money. I think it paid like $11 an hour or something. And so you're like, oh shit, because everything else, was paying $7.50. But you're working out there, and they make you go up on the roof because that's where it's the hottest in August, obviously, is on this asphalt roof. and there's like a part of the plant where they do all the rendering and stuff of the hogs, and they steam them to get the hair off of them, and then all that steam travels through this big insulated tube over the roof and goes into, where all the shit goes, all the leftovers from the hogs. Well, that tube sometimes springs a leak, right? And so for months it would shoot this steamy hair mixture out over the roof that would then fester in the heat and like go rotten and get maggots. And so it was my first job getting out there was to go out there with like a grain shovel and a big broom, stiff bristled chop broom, and clean all that off.
Man.
So that's how they welcome you.
So for anybody out there listening, eating a BLT right now, we're really sorry.
Dude, you just gotta know the work that goes in to getting that BLT on your table, man.
Don't even think about it.
Good. It's not good, dude.
I had a buddy. He was the drummer in my old band. He worked for a couple days worked for a cattle processing plant, and what he had to do is whenever, basically, as the cattle go across the conveyor belt after they've been, slaughtered and whatnot, everything falls down into this big auger that's not going to be used, and it's ground up in this auger. And when the auger broke down, he was the guy that had to go down in that chute and clean the auger.
Yeah, man. There's a place like that in farmland too, where there was this room. I don't remember what they called it, and but my dad had told me stories about how sometimes it's kind of the same thing, like a drain at the bottom of it, where if it gets clogged, that just starts filling up with blood and water and liquids and all this runoff, like hog shit and all this stuff. And he was telling me how guys would have to go down there in like hip waders and reach down and unclog that. And apparently the way that they did it without like vomiting was taking garlic cloves and sticking them in their lips.
Ugh.
And apparently the garlic in their mouth was better than the hog waste. And
I still think meat is delicious though.
well, it is, man. It is. It's just when you get anything so big like that.
Oh yeah.
And
there's that commercial scale. It's just
there's just waste to it that I don't know. It gets pretty gnarly. It gets really gnarly.
Definitely not a pretty process by any means, but the end product just tastes pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, dude, that's the best.
And
because
those guys are the hidden heroes that have to go down and do that, because those guys are the guys that let us have those, nice steaks and bacon.
Oh man, let me tell you this. My dad worked in the works still. He's got a year or two left before he retires, but he worked in a smokehouse area, and I figured out that if I would go visit him in the smokehouse, occasionally what would happen is this fresh smoked and sealed meat would come out on these like conveyor belt chains on hooks, and every once in a while one would fall off on the floor, and if you saw it, you were supposed to grab it and throw it away. But what I would do is I would go over there periodically throughout the day, and I would check and see if anything fell, and if it did, I would pick it up and I'd put it in a bucket and put a shop towel over it, and then I would just eat like fresh smoked pork ribs. And dude, I gotta say, I was a shit employee at that job because what they make you do, and there's no respect, and the blue hats there is what they would call the management, because they all have blue hard hats. There was this one guy there who was like 5 foot tall, really gravelly voice, kind of looked like a toad. Like, this dude was a fucking piece of shit, and you're not supposed to smoke except out front in these old bus stops they had bought. That's where you go smoke, right? And I smoked cigarettes at the time, so I would go out there and I would hang out with the Vietnamese guys and the Sudanese guys, and they smoked these cigarettes that were like 6 inches long, and they would always give you one, and they were the coolest guys. But this dude, this blue hat, he would never go out there and go smoke. He would always smoke by these like ammonia tanks in this hidden little corner. And I don't know, it just really peeved me off, like how he just thought he was so much better than anybody. And so you remember in like middle school they had those no puffin t-shirts and signs all around with that dumbass bird smoking. I made one of those signs. I printed it off and I made it, and I hung it up on the wall like 7 foot high because I knew this guy couldn't reach it. And I hung it right where he went to smoke every day. And yeah, I heard he got really pissed. But then like a year later, he ended up getting fired because the upper management also figured out that he was a piece of shit. But what can you do?
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I took a lot of naps on that job. Just find those places in the shade where it's like, I'm not cleaning up any more dead hog shit today.
Yeah.
I'm going to go find a little place in the shade under an air conditioner. And I'm going to rack out for an hour.
I've worked some bad jobs in my life, or some crappy jobs, unpleasant jobs, but nothing like that. And I know that from my work experience, I'm so appreciative of what I get to do now and the fact that I don't have to work for people like that. But yeah, I imagine that just gives you a whole new appreciation for being able to be your own boss and do your own thing.
That's the thing, is some days you have those days where you're like, man, I wish that I didn't have to figure out what to do or how I was going to make money this month or this or this or that. And then I think back to, that's an extreme example of a shitty job.
Yeah.
But I just think back to like the feeling that I've always hated the most is somebody telling me what to do.
Right.
Or saying, you have to do this because I'm telling you to do this.
Right.
That's turned me off from so many things in life. And it's like, it's not even that I've had a bunch of shitty jobs. It's just that every job that I've had, that's been the one problem where it's like, I don't want to be told what to do. I've worked a couple jobs that have been amazing because they're like, we want you to work in this job because of what you do and how you do it. Mm-hmm. And we want you to be part of a team. You know what I mean? I think that's the only way to like really work in a day job, is if it's a team based and not a, I'm going to tell you what to do and how to fucking do it.
Yeah.
The environment.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I found there's people I've designated with, like, if I say, like, you can tell me what to do, then you can tell me what to do. Like, Mick is one of those guys. If he tells me what to do, then I do it. But he's about the only one.
Yeah.
And anybody else that tries, it just burns me. So getting back to the music then, when did you end up getting your first guitar, and how did you kind of get inspired to write your own songs?
I think I was 13 or 14, somewhere in that age range. And I got like one of those first stacked Walmart guitars for Christmas.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And my parents didn't know if I would play it or not. They were kind of hesitant to get me one because, even at like $100, that was a lot of money. And so it was like, that was the first guitar. And then it comes with a little book that teaches you basic chords. And so I taught myself some of those chords and thought, that I was big shit guitar man around town. Yeah. And so another friend of mine had also gotten a guitar for Christmas. And we got together and he was like, let's play some songs. But we couldn't play any songs because we weren't good enough. And so I just started making songs up so that I had something to play. and I don't know, through that, it came, the obvious next step was, let's start a band. And so we started a band, just the two of us. And he didn't want to sing because, well, neither one of us wanted to, At that age, it felt embarrassing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or you're just so self-conscious that it's like, I'm not doing it, you do it. And so either way, however it happened, I was the one that got made to be the singer. And so from being the singer, I remember I wrote this song called Sinners and Saints. And it was the first song I ever wrote. And it was, all things considered, probably not as bad as some are. Mm-hmm. But it was, like 4 power chords and kind of just teenage angsty sounding shit that really made no sense. It's like trying to be overly poetic and stuff. But I remember GarageBand had kind of just been coming out, and this dude, he had a Mac, and so we recorded it just through the built-in mic. and we recorded that song, and then he played it to one of our teachers, and she later said to me, she was like, hey, I heard your song and I really enjoyed it, and I was like so embarrassed that she heard it, because even I knew it wasn't good. You know what I mean? But on the other hand, having somebody say, hey, I heard your song and I really thought that was cool, that made me want to keep doing it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so that's kind of, it just came about because, like you said, there's nothing really to do. And so we started the band just for something to do, and nobody else wanted to write songs. And so I started writing them because I wasn't good enough to learn other people's. And here we are.
So your first band, you're already playing originals?
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. That's like a jump start on about 10 years,
really.
isn't it?
Yeah, but like I said, it wasn't like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to be a songwriter. It was like, well, I want to play something, but I can't play anything, so I'm just going to make something up.
Yeah.
Like the first guitar riff that I ever learned actually was Smoke on the Water. And I learned it from watching School of Rock, that Jack Black movie.
Oh, yeah.
We had it on VHS, or I think it was VHS, yeah. And I just kept watching that scene where he's teaching that kid that Smoke on the Water riff. And so I would watch it, and then I would try to play it, and then I'd pause and rewind and keep going back. And so that was actually the first real song that I learned. Okay. I still don't know the whole song. I just know that riff.
I don't think anybody knows the whole song.
It doesn't change. I'm pretty sure it's the same three chords all the way through.
So what was the name of that band?
Oh man, I don't even remember. We went through some real stinkers. We would change the band name like every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
You know, the first band that we had was me on guitar, my buddy Jordan, who is the guy that I started with, my brother Logan, who once he found out we were playing a band, he was like, well, I want to play bass. If anybody's playing bass, it's going to be me. And so he bought, this little $200 bass. And then Jake Brandt was our drummer. And he was, he's 7 years older than me. So he was like, I'll fucking teach you guys how to be a band. And, he could drum okay. And
but he could buy beer probably, right?
Well, he could buy beer, and he was cool, because this was in like 2007, 2008 era. And so, he had like the long hair and the pierced ears and the shirts with skulls and wore like a sport coat. And we were all like, God damn, this motherfucker's cool. And he's still playing lead guitar for me, and Logan's still playing bass for me. But he came up, we had started this band, and I was writing songs for that band too. And he came up with the band name Remember Yesterday, from that line from that Skid Row song. Okay. Remember yesterday. Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah. And we all thought it was cool because it was Jake's idea, and we all thought Jake was cool. And so we went with it, and then we booked a show. And our first show was in this little town called Narca, Kansas, at this kind of DIY festival that these guys had put together called Rocka Narca. And there was actually like probably 300 people there. Like, it was a pretty big thing. It's just a small little town, but they had like a town hall that we rented out, like an old gymnasium, and that's where the show was. And I think we had 4 or 5 songs, and we went and we played those 4 or 5 songs. One of them was a cover of Brand New, The Boy Who Blocked His Own Shot. If you remember that song, that was one of those songs that we played. And then the other ones were originals, and I remember we played them, and then the other bands played. And somebody came out and said, hey, they want you guys to go back up and play again. And I was like, fuck, we don't know any more songs.
We've already got through our material.
We already blew our load, man. That's all we got. And they were like, no, you don't get it. They want you to play your show again. And I remember looking at my dad, because my parents obviously came, and telling him, this is the best night of my life. Because I was like, these people like my songs. They like my band. And it's like, looking back, I realized that they were all just drunk and didn't want to play anymore. But so we got up and we played those songs again. And yeah, it was awesome. And we kept booking gigs wherever we could get them then. And what we ran into with the name Remember Yesterday is people kept thinking we were like an oldies cover band.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
they were like, "Oh, remember yesterday? Do you play, Bing Crosby?" And it's like, what? You're supposed to think we're tough and cool and artsy and angsty.
Check out this fucking Affliction shirt I'm wearing. Do I look like I'm playing Bing Crosby?
Dude, I know. It was an embarrassing time of skinny jeans and Chuck Taylors.
Oh man, I was right there with you. White belts, white leather belts, off to the side.
With the studs?
Yep.
Checkered belts. Did you ever have a checkered belt?
I don't think I had one of those, but I had
a rainbow one.
Girl jeans.
Hey, I fucking wear a kilt sometimes on the stage, so I can't talk.
To be fair, though, like, have you ever seen a guy in a kilt that didn't look like a badass?
That's true.
Yeah, I see them all the time.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like, kilts have become, like, especially like at Irish festivals, there's always a bunch of vendors selling
I guess that makes sense.
Kilts. You know how sometimes you'll see a girl wearing like a mini skirt and you think, ugh, she shouldn't be wearing that.
Yeah.
Same thing happens with kilts.
Dudes.
Yeah, especially like big, overweight dudes. And then they're usually wearing, like, to me, if you wear a kilt, you should wear either the correct socks or boots. But when you see a guy wearing a kilt with no-show Nike socks and, and a pair of fucking Air Maxes,
he looks like a bitch.
Yeah. He's never going to wear this kilt after this festival ever again.
Have you ever seen those guys at like the convenience store and they walk in and they got the long greasy hair and those perfectly round glasses and they're wearing the utility kilts?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. We got sponsored by them, by
Really?
Utility Kilt. Yeah. I hadn't even heard of them. And we were playing a show and this guy came up and he's like, hey, are you familiar with our kilts? And I was like, no, but I see a bunch of fat douchebags wearing them. And he's like, well, we'd like to give you guys kilts. And I was like, sure. Come to find out, they're like $200.
Oh, shit. Are
they're
they really?
Outrageous. Yeah.
Huh. See, I feel like anybody who would wear a utility kilt is also wearing a shirt with like a dragon on it and buying a sword at the flea market.
Well, my buddy actually worked for this. It was like a European auto repair place in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and they made that their uniform. It was like, I don't know, O'Malley or something.
Utility kilt?
Yeah,
they are comfortable.
Yeah,
they are comfortable. In fact, the same festival that we played at, it was McPherson Highland Games on McPherson, Kansas, and so we got given these kilts, so we had to wear them during our performance. Well, some fucking genius booked the World Highland Games in McPherson, Kansas, which is a dry town. So you had all these athletes from around the world coming to do the Highland Games. They get to McPherson and they're like, what?
There's no booze.
There's no booze. So literally, and this is kind of the beauty of small towns, is like 5 minutes away, the next kind of town over had like a VFW kind of place where they could serve alcohol. So this festival organizer scrambles at the end to do the closing game ceremony at the VFW, which we have to play at. So you had all these huge, like, have you ever seen the Highland Games? These fucking guys put CrossFitters to shame. They're just massive, big, strong men. So we're playing this kind of closing ceremony at this VFW that we just got moved to, like, quick. They're scrounging sound equipment, like everything is just thrown together. These guys are on an absolute bender at this point because they haven't had drinks for like 2-3 days. The games are over and they're just cutting loose. So there was a couple of opening acts, and then we walk on stage, and I am greeted with, by this time, a bunch of guys who are pretty drunk and feeling good, and they're laying back in these chairs in this VFW with their legs spread apart. And I walk on stage and I see like 50 sets of old balls like right in front of me. And I was like, this is going to be a fucking great gig, I can tell. So yeah, there's benefits, and then there's that part of wearing the kilt too.
I saw a pair of old balls one time. I was working at this store in Lincoln, and this old dude, came up to the store, and we had like a big front window where you could see out into the parking lot. And he parks and he gets out of his car and he's got one leg in the car. It's like a red convertible. One leg in the car, one leg out of the car, wearing these short shorts. It's in the summer.
Yeah.
And this guy I don't know what the fuck he was thinking, but literally one of his nuts It's just it looks
like
like
hanging out.
you know that sad dog that talks like this? It looked like one of his saggy ass cheeks hanging down right out of this dude's shorts.
The thing we all get to look forward to as we age.
Yep. Oh, gravity.
Dude,
Jeez.
that's rough.
So you started your high school band. You play your first couple gigs. Let's fast forward a little bit. Now you're doing it. Would it be safe to say you play, close to 200 shows a year? At least I know you used to, didn't you?
Yeah, normally, like 2 years ago, I did over 200 shows, and that was a mix of like solo and full band. And then this last year, I kind of slowed it down a little bit, focusing on different areas and how to touring, but also my wife and I had a son, and so I watch him full time during the day, and then I tour, Thursday through Sunday, or unless I got to be gone for like a week at a time. So this last year I did right around 120 dates on the road, and then this year, who knows?
Yeah,
it's going to be a lot, but.
And for people that don't really, musicians playing 100 shows a year is a lot. Basically, if you think of playing 2 shows a weekend every single weekend for the entire year, that's 100 shows. So if you think of doing 200, then you double that. That's, basically 4 days, 4 days a week. And I remember, so we've got a mutual friend, Leffy Gaston, used to have a podcast, Left for Deaf. I remember hearing you interviewed on his podcast, and this was before you kind of set out on the major touring. And you said on that podcast you were looking forward to going back and listening, after this tour to see how much you'd changed from beginning to the end. So how would you say that touring like that has changed you? Seeing the United States, meeting so many people, playing so many shows, has it changed you? Or yeah.
I mean, I think it's a combination of touring and just life changes in general, going into being a dad and being full-time self-employed and, not to mention being gone all the time. And a lot of that first year of touring, it was pretty much 5 months on the road nonstop. My wife was pregnant at the time. It was me by myself, and I would go out for 30 to 35 days at a time.
Wow.
And the shows did not really pay that much, like maybe it would be a good night if you had like $100 or $200 guarantee. So I was sleeping in the van, and the first van I had was like a Chevy Uplander minivan. And so I built a bunk that all the gear, the PA system, the merch, the instruments, that all went under that bunk. And then I slept on a foam pad on top, and I took that out for a month. And, when I was coming back from that first month, I had a week off, and it was like 3 a.m, and I had driven from Nashville to St. Louis and played a show in St. Louis, and then I was going to drive home from Omaha from St. Louis, and I had just got through Kansas City, and I was in Platte County or Platte Valley.
Platte City.
Yeah. And it was 3 a.m, rainstorm, stereotypical kind of, and my front wheel broke off of the van.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was the front driver's side wheel, and I realized what had happened because the front end just collapsed and kind of burst into a ball of flame. There was just a shit ton of fire from that rotor hitting the ground. And then that lit up everything enough to see that front wheel roll away in front of me and off into the woods. And I was really, lucky that it was so early in the morning and that nobody was around, because if that would have hit somebody, that could have fucked their car up or caused an accident. And I was also just lucky that thing didn't roll, because with all my shit in the back, I would have been really screwed. But it was I kind of skidded it right in the middle of like an entrance to the highway, and I was just parked in this little triangle, and luckily had AAA, and so the tow truck driver came up and he hauled me 98 miles until the free towing ran out.
Wow.
And dropped me off at a little truck stop that's called Trails End, and it was called Trails End Truck Stop. I remember that. And so I spent the night there. I just slept in the van in the front seat, And it was rough, man. I remember just sitting there and like being like, holy shit, I
Life
can't
choices.
believe. Yeah, I was like, I can't believe, like, I almost just died. I almost made it the whole first month of touring, and then on the last night, I almost died. And then I called my wife, and then I called my dad, and he came the next day. It was like 3 hours
Yeah.
from his farm, and he came with a car trailer and picked me up and went back, and I borrowed his truck and went back up to Omaha and saw my wife, and it was just that was an experience. But then I decided that I wasn't fucking around no more. So I bought one of those Ford E350s, like
Nice.
a nice van, a bigger van, and I put a bunk in there. And it's amazing how a nice big van shrinks when you live in it for 4 months.
Oh, yeah.
So I would in this new van, I took that out for the rest of that year's touring. And it's the van that I'm still using to tour full band and stuff. But I had a bunk in the back, and it was kind of the same setup, a little bit more room. And I went out and, sleeping in there every night. And I would take a cooler with me and pack food, so that my goal was to basically have a budget to live off of food-wise, $10 or less every day. And so I was able to stick to that. That way, once you're spending money on food and gas, even if you're only making $100 a day or maybe 150 after tips, you still have enough to, pay your bills at home and do all that kind of stuff. So it was just traveling around, singing songs, and a lot of times to nobody, but sometimes to really great shows. But I would travel all over, the mountain region and down south and through New Mexico. Like, there was one time in New Mexico, I was playing in Taos, and there was this, I believe it was like a Hindu shaman or something is what he told me he was. And he looked the part, man. He was a white dude with, I don't know. Have you guys ever been down to like New Mexico desert area?
Yeah.
If you see those people that are locals there, they're different, man. Those desert people, they're a different type of person. And this was a desert person. And so he gave me this big nug of weed, and he bought a t-shirt, and he told me where to go find these hot springs down in the Rio Grande Gorge, which is right outside of Taos. And so the next day, I drove out into the middle of the desert. You had to drive like 8 or 10 miles, something like that. And then you hike another mile down this old ass trail that takes you, it's a very, very, very deep gorge, like something like 800 or 1,000 feet. So it takes a while to hike down there. And then I finally found these hot springs, which was very cool. And I just got totally naked. I got in these hot springs, and I sat there and I smoked this dude's weed that he gave me. And then this other guy showed up, and he was like mid-50s. And this dude just gets naked, and I'm like high and naked. And
This
he's
sounds
just
like a Jim Morrison song.
Dude, I know, listen. And he just gets in and starts talking, and it was not awkward at all. And this dude's just like telling me how he was some banker or something from somewhere and heard about this place. So he literally took a vacation, drove out to come find this, and he knew all this history about this thing. And we're just chilling there. And then I'm like, this is kind of weird. I'm just sitting here naked with a stranger in this hot natural pool. And then all of a sudden this thunderstorm breaks loose, and it just starts pouring, and I was high at the time. This was, I started getting super paranoid that there was going to be a flash flood in the river. And so this dude's just like mid-sentence going on about some historical facts about the Rio Grande. And I just get out of this pool, and I get dressed, and I was like, I got to get the fuck out of here, man. And I started hiking up the gorge, and then I realized how silly I was being. But I still left, and man, that's like one of the tour stories, especially in New Mexico. I feel it was weird because people in New Mexico kept giving me weed.
Yeah.
And I kept smoking it. And so like one time outside of a town called Madrid, I really wanted, it gets so dark out in the desert, And so I just wanted to look at the stars. And so I smoked some of this weed. I think it was still from the Hindu shaman priest guy. And I laid out on the roof of the van. I was camped out at this old baseball field on the edge of town. I laid out on the roof of the van, and I just wanted to see the stars and like really, really see them. And out there, you can even see parts of galaxies and stuff. And this weed just kept making me so paranoid that I thought I was gonna get attacked by a mountain lion. I thought that I was just laying up there, and I was like, any fucking second, this mountain lion is gonna just come sink its teeth into my skull. And so I just went back in the van, and I started watching. I had bought like a $5 DVD collection of old John Wayne movies, and so I just watched those in the van. And
Man.
Yeah, I quit smoking weed not long after that.
Don't do drugs, kids.
Dude, I know, man.
Drugs is bad.
Yeah. Well, then, so that was some major touring. And I got to tell a story, too, just because. So Evan and I used to play together a little bit with Dylan Bloom, the guy I still play with.
Yep.
And there was a show that we were playing, and I remember this very distinctly because we were playing with Shooter Jennings.
Mm-hmm.
And we were backstage, and I could just tell that you were just like stressed out. Like you were just so stressed. And we were just kind of talking and eating the food. And you mentioned something about money. Oh man, I just got to find a way to make some money. And I'm like, dude, you should go drive Uber. And you're like, dude, that is amazing. Like you have just completely taken the stress off my shoulders. Come to find out, that's the night that we found out your wife was pregnant and you were going to have your son.
Mm-hmm.
And I imagine, I can't imagine playing the shows that I do with a kid, right? And we play maybe 100 shows a year or so, not nearly as much as you do. How has becoming a father changed what you do? Maybe, I don't know if it's changed your songwriting. Obviously, it sounds like it's changed your touring. How has that, I don't know, helped you grow, helped you change? What has that done for you?
I would say most of all, it's helped me gain focus and perspective. It's like I tell stories about how I would used to go out and you'd play shows, and it was almost just kind of something fun to do, and you had this romanticized idea of like, well, for me to do a really good show, I'm gonna have 5 shots of tequila tonight and smoke a joint, and that's how I'll really get my art to the public.
Mm-hmm.
And then once that change happened, where I had Cohen become part of my life, and realizing what I really want my life to be and what I want my story to be, and how I want to make art and perform that art, and just who I want to be as a man before any art gets made, that all came sharply into perspective because of him, and kind of came into focus. And it just, more than anything, it changed who I wanted to be as a person, which is what really influenced the music that I make and how I tour and how I move. So as far as touring goes, I still get out and play on the road more so than I did ever before, and it's more focused. Mm-hmm. I'm making sure that it's like I'm going here to do the best that I can every night, because if I'm going to drive, 2,000 miles in a weekend and I'm going to spend this time away from my family, I need to make it worth it. Mm-hmm. And I need to give everything that I have while I'm there and not let bullshit like, getting high or having drinks, get in the way of that. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, I would say that's one of the biggest things, is gaining that focus and just changing what I think is cool and who I want to be and how I want people to see me. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, definitely does. That's cool. So what would you say the future then holds for you? What are you looking to accomplish moving forward, and what are some kind of the plans you have right now?
Well, I put out my first album, it'll be 2 years this year, and that was kind of an amalgamation of music that I had written over the course of 4 or 5 years. And so kind of what's next is putting out new music that was written more intentionally and is really focused on telling stories, and not just of myself, but as from different people that I've actually met, people that exist, and telling their stories, but also just telling kind of larger, big picture stories and focusing in on, you know, different topics and things like that. So I'm got a couple new releases coming out that haven't been like officially announced yet even, but I recorded a 5-song solo EP that I wrote as a whole project this year, called Promised Land, and I'm putting that out. I'm really proud of how that came about. And then I got another, like a full 11 or 12 song full length LP that we're going into the studio for that later this spring, early summer, and doing that. So it's just focusing on putting out new music and moving forward, and career wise, you know, making smart choices, because I feel like right now I'm kind of in this spot where careers can die really easily, where you've kind of starting to get over this hump of just being a local musician, and you're starting to break into a bigger, wider audience and scene. And I feel like it's really important to make smart decisions now on what to do and how to do it. Otherwise, you know, people who don't may not make it to that next level.
Yeah.
And I don't put all my self-worth on this as a career. It's something that I really want to do. And I feel like the opportunities are there to make it happen. So it's just working towards those goals as hard as I can.
And the full length's going to be with the band. It's Evan Bartels and the Stony Lonesomes, right?
Yeah, that's what I've been. I wanted to give the guys that play in a band with me, because they're the same guys that go on the road with me. They're the same guys that go to the studio with me. So I wanted to give them an identity, and give them a name. And I thought the Stony Lonesomes would be a good one.
And so the album that you were talking about, it's The Devil, God, and Me, correct?
Yeah.
The one that you already have out, that was actually nominated for Album of the Year by the Omaha Arts and Entertainment Awards that they just had this weekend. From what I understand, you got robbed and you didn't win. My votes were for you, but
I don't know if I got robbed, man. I mean, they didn't even spell my name right on the announcements, so
I didn't even hear who win. But I and several other people that you know were quite upset that you didn't win. So we're in your corner.
Who needs an OEA when you got Theo Von?
That's true.
I got an OEA.
Yeah, Mick
You
does
got
have
one?
an OEA.
Yeah, for best. The first year that they did it, actually, they had best ethnic category,
No shit.
and it was like us and a mariachi band.
Wow, I wonder if it was the one that used to have band practice behind my house on Thursdays.
I don't
'Cause
know.
they were pretty good.
But I didn't even know it was like kind of a big deal. And they're like, well, you know, you gotta come to it, and then we'll see if you win. And I was like, oh, like this is like a real award show. Like you gotta sit in the audience to like. And I was like, I don't give a fuck about that kind of shit. Until I actually got there. It was at the Holland Center, and I'm seeing people dressed up and guys that I would go to the bar to listen to. And I was like, oh shit. And then it kind of got exciting. Like, wow, it's us and those Mexican dudes over there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember the first year. I've been to the awards once, and it was actually with Dylan. He had invited me to go along with him. I think I was nominated for some award, and then he was nominated, I think, for Best Country. And I was so excited to go. And so we go, we dress all up, and we get there, and it was a total shit show. I remember Matt Whipkey, who's a great songwriter with a killer band.
Yeah.
They were doing a special performance, and like halfway through, somebody started playing like a DJ track and cut off their set.
Oh, jeez.
And then the announcers and the hosts, they all got really drunk, and they would go up to the podiums with their drinks in hands, and it was just, they said it, I think they started running out of time towards the end, because when they were doing awards for like the best play directors and light people and shit like that, they wouldn't even have them come up and get their awards. And I remember them being like, saying just like really rude shit. And so the first time I went, I got a bad taste in my mouth. And then this year, nobody from them actually reached out and said like, hey, you were nominated for this award, congratulations. I just happened to be, somebody saw it on like a video and tagged me and was like, I heard that you were nominated for this award. And so I was like, what? And then I went and I watched the video, and they had my name spelled wrong. For Album of the Year, one of the biggest awards that they offer, Album of the Year, they had my name spelled wrong. On their website, they had it listed wrong. And I was like, okay, cool. And then I was like, well, maybe I'll go. It does feel good to get some sort of recognition from the city that you live in, and have them say like, hey, this album was really good. But I don't know, man, just the fact that they didn't spell my name right, and then tickets were like 30 bucks. And I was like, I would spend that money, but it's like, I don't know, just the experience I had in the past and all that. I was like,
I don't think they quite have it right, but it is a testament to the music that comes out of Omaha that we even have, for the city the size that it is, that we even have an event like that. And I mean, you look at the talent that has come out of Omaha, it always blows me away. There just seems to be this environment that fosters singer-songwriters, bands. Unfortunately, I don't think there's enough venues that support music, and that's getting tougher and tougher every year too.
Absolutely.
There is a ton of great bands and artists, and that's why I think that something like the OEAs is really important, because getting recognition can help you when you feel like you're not being heard.
Yeah.
It helps you feel like, that's why I'm making this, because it's affecting people. And I think it's really, really good for everybody who like goes and wins those awards and gets nominated for them. I just think, not for me.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just one of those
I do
things.
feel like award shows kind of turn it into a competition.
Yeah,
like
and I don't like that.
It's still fun. It's still great to be nominated. And having your name, even though if it's spelled wrong, hopefully they have a link to your
website. You just got back
but-
from walking the red carpet in Colorado, right?
Yeah, that was for the Rocky Mountain Country Music Association. We were nominated for Album of the Year there.
Did you win?
Which is crazy because we didn't win. Ned Ledoux won. I mean, Chris Ledoux's son.
To be fair, Ned Ledoux is the shit.
Yeah, he's the man. But just the fact that we were in the same category as him. But yeah, it was actually, this year was one of the biggest years for our band, and it was the first year out of 8 that we weren't nominated by an OEA. So whatever, maybe next year. But it's not a competition. As long as we're out there making great art, then that's the goal. That's my goal.
Yeah.
So we'll go ahead and just kind of start to wrap up.
I got a question about now you told me that he recently, like, you lost a bunch of weight.
Yeah, I did.
So what happened with all of that? Was this all part of kind of new responsibility, lifestyle?
Well, I had always been a little chubby, and then you get married, and then you get a little chubby gets a lot of chubby.
Yeah.
And being on the road and just, like I said earlier, having that romanticized idea of what life as a musician or an artist should be, I just really let my health kind of start slipping. And so the first thing that I had wanted to do, like a year and a half ago or 2 years ago, right when I started that big round of touring and knowing that we were going to have a kid, was I wanted to quit smoking cigarettes. And so that was my first goal. And I had also always told myself that I would get in shape by the time I was 25. Otherwise, I probably never would. And so it was just that. And, the biggest thing I wanted to have in my life was discipline. And that's what I started doing, is just making choices on that, like with what I was going to eat and with what I was going to put in my body and how I was going to treat myself and try to think of myself. And the weight loss and stuff, that's really just, a side effect of a bunch of little choices together. I hit the gym a lot. Like last year on January 9th, 2018, that's when I started really doing my diet and exercise program. And as far as exercise go, I kind of keep it, I'm really into bodybuilding, and especially like old school physique bodybuilding and aesthetic stuff like that. And so that's what I wanted to base my workouts off of, because that's been my goal. And so it's been doing that. I've been following a program that I've designed and built up with the help of friends who are really deep into bodybuilding and doing stuff like that. And I followed that since January 9th, 2018, and strict dieting. And then I've used things like, the ketogenic diet at times or intermittent fasting, things like that. I've used a lot. And I've lost in a little over a year. I've lost 83 pounds as of yesterday.
That's fucking awesome.
Yeah, it's just it's way different. I was actually texting with some old friends today and catching up, and one of them sent this video of me talking shit, just backstage at a show a few years ago, and just watching that was crazy. Seeing like just how much bigger I was and how unhealthy I looked. I'll show it to you guys afterwards. It's really weird to see, but yeah, man, it's just like I said, it's changing what I thought was cool. And I know, part of that for me was like you were talking about who your role models are, guys like Jocko Willink and Joe Rogan and Leaf Babin and all these guys like that, David Goggins, hearing guys like that and seeing, man, what's cool is being in your 40s or 50s and being the baddest motherfucker in the room.
Oh, yeah.
It's not being the guy who's smoking cigarettes
50s.
and
being
being
the baddest motherfucker in the room.
or being in 50s, it's like that's what's cool. Is one of the quotes that I had heard was strength is never a weakness, and I was like, that's what I want my life to be
a good
about.
one.
And like Jocko says, like no fucking slack. And so I've actually for 6-7 months I get up at 4:20 every day. 4:20 is when I set my first alarm, and I'm out of bed at 4:30.
That's awesome.
Because I think if Jocko's out there doing it, then I can do it. You know what I mean? I just tell myself those little wins. So yeah, I get up at 4:30 every day, and then I'm at the gym from about 5 to 7:15, 7:30, and then back home being a dad and working and doing all that stuff and doing a lot of cooking and
Awesome.
all the stay-at-home dad stuff, and then touring on top of it and trying to
Plate is
just
full.
keep moving.
I bet the touring is better. I noticed, honestly, it was a strange thing that I noticed, but when I started getting in shape, I could actually sing a lot better because
dude.
I had so much more lung capacity.
Yeah, man, since giving up smoking, it's been a long time not a horribly long time, but for me it's been a long time since I've smoked cigarettes. And being able to run, because half of my workout every day for an hour I do cardio sessions, and so getting more in shape that way, it's made singing fun again because I can do it for an hour and a half and not have to worry about feeling like my throat's gonna start bleeding. It just makes life so much more fun. And that's one thing that I wanted is, I just wanted that discipline to be able to be the person that I always hoped that I could be, and that I thought that I could be. And so far, it's going pretty good.
Yeah.
And all you have to do is do it and not stop. That's the biggest thing I've learned is consistency, whether it's in working out or working towards a career. It's just, if you know what to do it and don't stop doing it. And if you don't stop doing it, if you're consistent, then change will happen.
That's awesome. It's awesome. That's that almost the exact message we're trying to get out with this podcast.
Right.
So from someone in a completely different field than we've interviewed so far, it's, the same lessons apply. And I remember actually the night, I don't know if it was the night that you quit, but I remember we were playing a gig and you're like, guys, this is the last cigarette I'm ever going to smoke.
I remember that. That was at the Single Barrel.
Yep.
And that was one of the last ones. That's the thing is when you fuck up on something like that, you gotta just be like, well, I gotta go back to it.
Yep.
It's just like having a cheat day, or having a rest day or whatever. You can't just hate yourself if you screw up in life. You gotta move forward.
Yep, just deal with it and keep going. I mean, here with all these New Year's resolutions, we're each, when we're recording this, it's the end of January, which means most people have probably already given up on their New Year's resolution. The crazy thing is you still got 11 months. You've still got 11 months where you can get the results that you want to see by 2020, right? And amazing things can happen in 11 months. I mean, 83 pounds and what was it, 20? So a year.
Yeah, a little over a year.
So, I mean, if you took it that at 11 months, then maybe 70 pounds. But like, imagine you, if you're overweight, losing 70 pounds by 2020, how much better you're going to feel and how much you'll have taught yourself.
And the thing is, too, is you never realize how, like, out of shape you are or how fat you are until people start telling you how fat you're not, you know? And even now, I'm really trying to work, for me right now, is working on contentment. You know, it's like not trying to be happy or this or that, because I don't feel like really any of us have the right to be happy. You know, happiness is one of those, it's a momentary emotion, I feel. It's not something you want to sit in forever. It's something that you feel. But one thing that I feel is sustainable is contentment to a degree. And so I'm trying to find that now, because I'll still have those mornings where I look in the mirror and I'm like, what a fat, weak piece of shit. And so I got to look back at the photos that I've taken and been like, no, you're making progress.
Yeah.
And that's what life is about, is progress wherever you are. And then I think contentment can be dangerous if you get comfortable in it and you say, well, I'm happy with being here. But you have to have some level of being like, I'm content with the work that I've put in, because it's getting me stronger every day so that I can push forward for more, you know?
Yeah, one of the little tricks that I do with a lot of my clients, especially when they've had like a major weight loss like you've had, is there's going to be times where you think, was this it? Have I lost everything I'm going to lose or whatever? And you know, so like for someone like you, I would grab 2 40-pound dumbbells and say, hold this motherfucker. And then they hold it and they're like, Jesus Christ. Like that 80 pounds just became real again. Like I was carrying this around on me every day. And you sometimes you just need to make it real and go, look, you know, you're not going backwards. You won't ever go back to that, hopefully. And if all you did was kept the 80 pounds off, then you're winning.
Yeah, that's a huge accomplishment.
Yeah.
That's the thing, is it's all about just making those small decisions every day.
You just have to do something every day.
Exactly. You can't change your life by just waking up one day and saying, I'm going to be a completely different person now. That's not how it works. It's all these small decisions that you stick to, and that's where the discipline comes in.
Yeah, I think I've mentioned it before, but people look at discipline and they think of it as this huge, big thing that just like envelops your entire day. But really, discipline comes in tiny little spurts, right? Discipline is getting up when the alarm goes off early in the morning.
Yep.
And, you know, then,
Making your bed.
yeah. And it comes in tiny little spurts. And as long as you you can be disciplined enough and strong enough to do those tiny little things every single day, then those tiny little actions become a huge accomplishment down the road. Yeah. It's hard to see it, day after day after day after day. It gets kind of difficult to see, but you look back on a year and 83 pounds later.
Yeah, man. So. And what happens is you learn through self-discipline that you can rely on yourself. And when you're the type of man that can rely on yourself and you can trust yourself that when that alarm's going to get up, I'm going to get up whether I want to or not, and I'm going to go lift some fucking weights, or I'm going to go do this or do whatever you need to do when you need to do it. If you know that you're that type of person yourself, the way that changes your relationships with everybody around you, whether it be, a wife or a partner or, a son or a daughter or a child or whatever, a business employer relationship, it just makes everything so much better just because you know that about yourself.
Or it's strength. People love to be around strength or be around strong people, and I don't mean just strong, I can lift up that many pounds or kilos. It's the mental strength to be able to put yourself in uncomfortable positions day in day. Getting up at 4:30 in the morning sounds outrageous to probably a lot of people listening to this podcast, but when you make yourself uncomfortable like that and then you kind of own it and master it, that's strength before you've picked up a weight or before you've lost 80 pounds.
Yeah.
And that's sometimes the battle that people don't seem to get. Like you're talking about small progress. Those are the big wins really in the big scheme of things, is that discipline and that strength to go, I could lay here, or I could get up like I'm supposed to.
Yeah.
You know, it's strength.
Absolutely. Well, this has been a great conversation, and I
Yeah.
think we're going to make it even a little bit better. First off, so we're actually going to have Evan play a couple of his songs. But first off, I want just to see, where can people find you online?
Well, you can get me on my website, which is just evanbartels.com. It's EVANBARTELS.com. Otherwise, my main social media stuff is Instagram, The Evan Bartels, and Facebook. If you just find me on there, those are pretty much how I share all my stuff with the world, whether it be tour dates or new music or what have you. That's the best ways to find me.
Awesome. Well, we are going to go ahead and get switched over here so that he can play a couple songs. We'll be back after his songs to do Workout of the Week and Book of the Week. But yeah, so coming up next is Evan Bartels live.
Are you ready?
Yep, let's hit it.
It's called Cutting Teeth. Can't fault a man for trying. You don't have fear of dying, but I do. Blame it on a change of seasons. Don't question our Lord's reasons, but I do. I know if I had a mind to, I could get the devil back upon my side. Buy a bottle and get drunk on cheap wine. Crush a pill, roll a bill, get good and high. If I had a mind to. Do you ever get the feeling you cannot keep on breathing? 'Cause I do. And in your time of weakness, withhold your self-forgiveness, 'cause I do. I know if I had a mind to, I could go out and burn the damn thing down. In the morning, blame it all on my bad luck. But how about the bullet and work it out? Cut my teeth, chewing on lead. Oh, but if I had a mind to, I could get the devil back upon my side. Buy a bottle and get drunk on cheap wine. Crush a pill, roll a bill, get good and high. If I had a mind to, I could go out and burn the damn thing down. In the morning, blame it all on my bad luck. But how about the bullet and work it out? Cut my teeth, chewing on lead.
cut my teeth chewing on lead.
Awesome.
Thank you.
This one's called Trouble Man.
I don't want no trouble, man, but I'll take it if you got it. Ain't no sense in letting me go to waste. I grew up a wild one, living hard and handsome, pocket full of pennies, only thing I ever knew about change. I don't want no trouble, man. We walked west down to the cottonwood grove, down by the bridge back on the farm, where my father told me about his father, taught me what it's like when you live with a broken heart. He said there's poison in the water you've been drinking. I can catch a smell of death coming out your lungs. I told him I don't want no trouble, man, but I'll take it if you got it. Ain't no sense in letting me go away. Well, I grew up a wild one, living hard and then some, pocket full of pennies, only thing I ever knew about change. I don't want no trouble, man. In my own defense, I'm sorry if I hurt you, sorry if I ever cut you down. There's a fine line between being charming and an asshole. I've known to toe the edge from time to time, but I don't want no trouble, man. I'll take it if you got it. Ain't no sense in letting me go to waste. I grew up a wild one, living hard and then some, pocket full of pennies, only thing I ever knew about change. I don't want no trouble, man. I don't want no trouble, man, but I'll take it if you got it. Ain't no sense in letting it go to waste.
Yeah.
Nice.
Thanks, guys.
All right, we are back. That guy is awesome.
Very cool.
He's one of those. So we didn't get it on. Well, we got it on tape, but I'm not going to broadcast it because it's a new song that he wrote. But he's like, "Hey, I just wrote this song today. What do you think?" And I'm like, "Damn you! That's a better song that I've written in my life.
Yeah.
You're performing it better than I ever perform, and you wrote it today."
Yeah.
So yeah, that was
Impressive.
That was awesome. I'm really glad he stopped in, and I imagine we'll be able to get him back out on here. So we'll go ahead and wrap up today with a workout of the week and then the book of the week. So we'll start with Mick and the workout.
Okay, so this workout of the week, you're trying to these next actually couple of workouts that we'll probably do are kind of my what I call like road warrior workouts, where if you don't have a gym available to you, or you're like, staying in a hotel or whatever, and you need something to kick your ass, or you just have 20 minutes, something like that, this is one of those workouts. 4 exercises, and you have 2 minutes to complete these 4 exercises. And then whatever time you have left of that 2 minutes is your rest time. So by the time you get to set number 3, your rest time may only be 15, 20 seconds. And good for you. So the workout goes like this. Exercise 1 is burpees, and you do 5 reps. The second exercise is push-ups, and you do 10 reps. Third exercise are called plank jacks. So if you get into a push-up position, basically up on your toes, and then you bring your feet apart like this behind you, that's a plank jack, and that is 15 reps. And then jump squats, where you squat down and then jump up into the air, 20 reps. So again, that's 5 burpees, 10 push-ups, 15 plank jacks, and 20 jump squats, all to be done in under 2 minutes. Whatever time you have left within that 2-minute window is your break, and then you repeat that 4 to 5 times, whatever you can manage. It's a workout that should take you about 10 minutes tops.
Awesome. I will. I'm going on the road this weekend. I'll have to use that.
Do it.
Awesome. All right. So for the book of the week, this week I'm going to recommend Vagabonding by Rolf Potts. Now this book it's been out for a while. Ralph Potts was a travel journalist, but his whole thing about vagabonding, it's the idea of travel that doesn't cost a lot. And what he would do oftentimes was he would come home and work a job, live minimally in the United States for a couple months, make enough money to go out on the road and go traveling. A lot of times what you'll find when you're doing that, the most expensive thing is going to be the airfare. So like, for example, airfare to Thailand is going to be expensive, but once you get to Thailand, you can live like a king on, not a lot of money.
Been there, done that.
So this book gives a lot of tips on that, different things to expect. And I'm going to read one passage out of it that I really liked concerning adventure. So the secret of adventure then is not to carefully seek it out, but to travel in such a way that it finds you. To do this, you first need to overcome the protective habits of home and open yourself up to unpredictability. As you begin to practice this openness, you quickly discover adventure in the simple reality of a world that defies your expectations. More often than not, you'll discover that adventure is a decision after the fact, a way of deciphering an event or an experience that you can't quite explain. In this way, adventure becomes a part of your daily life on the vagabonding road. We know from The First Step, wrote Tim Cahill, that travel is often a matter of confronting our fear of the unfamiliar and the unsettling, of the rooster's head in the soup, of the raggedy edge of unfocused dread, of that cliff face that draws us willy-nilly to its lip and forces us to peer into the void. Thus, when you begin your travels, the mere act of riding a third-class train or using a squat toilet might qualify as an adventure. As such novelties become familiar, you can continue to invite the unknown by weaning yourself from your guidebook, avoiding routines, and allowing yourself to get sidetracked. What better recipe for adventure than to put off deciding on your destination until you arrive at a bus station and scan the schedule for unfamiliar names? What better way to discover the unknown than to follow your instincts instead of your plans? So it's been a while since I've been overseas. I know you're about to head over to Mexico, right?
No, Dominican Republic.
Dominican, okay.
No, Punta Cana.
So I'm jealous. We've been doing a lot of traveling around the United States, and then with the band. Honestly, my vagabonding is with the band most weekends. And he talks about that here too, where I think one quote is, traveling basically gives you the ability to focus on someone that you would ignore here in the United States, and how even just certain places in your cities can be an adventure in and of themselves. So once again, book of the week is Vagabonding by Rolf Potts. I'll have that on the bookshelf on the website. Website, once again, thegentlemanbadass.com. I launched Patreon, so Patreon is up and ready. And then we've got YouTube, so check us out on YouTube. Like this video, subscribe on YouTube, as well as your favorite podcast provider. That really helps us out, and it helps us reach new audiences. And then also just share this website, or share this podcast. If you like what we're doing and you want us to keep doing it, then let your friends know, so that we have some listeners. So I think that's all I've got. Anything else?
Yeah, one other thing is if you do like what we're doing, obviously it probably wouldn't be as good without our guests. So especially the artists that we are getting on our podcast, like Evan, make sure that you visit their sites and give them some love and support them too. This is kind of a community of gentlemen badasses that we're building here, and it's important that we all kind of take care of each other and make sure you support our guests also.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll have all of Evan's information in the show notes. So check it out there, evanbartels.com. And his band is Evan Bartels and the Stony Lonesomes. I know they're on iTunes and pretty much everywhere else. So go give them a listen. You will not be disappointed. So thanks again for tuning in, and we will see you next time.